Is your Airbnb not performing the way you exactly want it to? What if I told you there are a few simple tricks that we could help with that will make your listing jump to the top of the algorithm, get more bookings, and even get more revenue, even with just a few small changes? Well, in today's episode of Bigger Stays, that's exactly what I did with Ashley Kehr from the Real Estate Rookie podcast, looking into one of her listings to see what are a few tweaks that we can make there to instantly increase her profitability and her visibility on Airbnb. Let's get into it. Running short-term rentals is constant work. Guest in, guest out, and you're still expected to be your own bookkeeper? I had multiple listings going and no real way to manage the money that was coming in. Between flipping beds and trying to match receipts from a payment a month ago, I couldn't even know if I was making real money. That's when I found Baselane. It's the official banking platform of BiggerPockets, and it handles all of the tracking and reporting I used to do manually. Now I can see real-time financial reports for each listing and know if there's a problem that's arising. For example, last month I had a 300% spike in my electric at one of my properties, and I realized that I needed to do something. I quickly set up a smart thermostat inside of it, and my electricity bill was cut almost in half. Thanks to things like Baselane, I avoided losing my profits and actually getting them back in my pocket. Start protecting your profits today by signing up at baselane.com/BP, and you'll get your $100 bonus right when you sign up. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bigger Stays. My name is Garrett Brown. I am the BiggerPockets STR expert. And today we have another BiggerPockets expert on, the co-host of the Real Estate Rookie podcast, Ashley Kehr. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I wouldn't say expert because I'm on the rookie show. At least at short-term rentals, I'm very much a rookie investor. And that's why I'm here today to learn.
I personally think you're an expert in all the fields all the time that we've talked on the rookie show. But I am happy to at least lend a little bit of my expertise in the short-term rental side today to one of your listings that you actually have in Bliss, New York. Tell me about how you acquired this short-term rental and what some of your goals were with it when you initially started this path for you.
This was my first short-term rental that I owned. I had done 2 short-term rental arbitrages at an apartment complex. I started that in 2018. So in 2022, I found this dilapidated A-frame property, and I had a bunch of cash at the time, and I was looking for my next thing. What did I want to do? And so I found this A-frame. It's on about 4 acres, and it was some guy's, basically his hunting cabin. And really the only attraction next to it was like in walking distance was some state land. And it was, you could go hiking there. So there wasn't really any big draw, but we decided to buy the property anyways. We bought it for $49,000.
Oh, wow. And so how much work did it take to get it up and running for you before you were ready to put it on Airbnb and everything else?
A lot more than I expected. It took us a full year from closing to our first guest. This was my first time partnering with a new partner, and he hired his uncles to do the rehab. And I was like, okay, yes, I trust you. Let's do this. We made the mistake of saying that we will pay them hourly. And after about 3 to 4 months, we were like, at first progress was really good. And then I was like, okay, this is like, we are bleeding money and there seems to be no progress. He was man enough and he went and fired his uncles from the job. So that showed a lot about him, that he was willing to do that. We went out and found subcontractors. So we hired a guy to do the roof. We hired a different guy to do the flooring in there. And then my partner, he was very handy himself, and also YouTube University. He went in and did a lot of the work. I tiled the shower. So some of the things we ended up finishing ourselves. And we had the rehab complete in about December. And then we put it ready to launch in March so that we didn't really have to have our first guests during the winter months.
It takes a lot to fire your family, but it's always a red flag to me when I hear like, oh, my uncle can take care of this, or I have a cousin that does. It's like, oh, do they really do it? Or did they just one time build a backyard deck or something like that? So I'm glad you were able to work through it and get it all fixed up. How much did you end up putting into the property when you were all said and done with your renovations, if you had an estimate of it?
Yeah, so all said and done, we're in for about $130,000 with the purchase price. And that was with going $40,000 over the rehab budget. So big learning curve. And like one thing I always like to say is that, this is my first short-term rental and this was a big rehab project. My very first investment was a small duplex and it didn't need a lot of rehab. One unit was already rented out and my risk was very minimized with that. If this A-frame would have been my first investment, it would have bankrupted me. Like I had no money when I started investing and it would have been awful. So like, I like the idea of just starting with something easier, less risk. And then as you build your strong foundation, you can go out and chase these shiny objects and do different things.
Well, you turned it into an amazing shiny object. I never saw the before pictures, but seeing the after pictures, I see the care that was taken and the right contractors are hired and your tile work in the bathroom that I did not know was amazing. So you took the right steps. So that's good to see. So then you finally launched it in March of 2023. Was that when you?
Yep.
How did that first year go for you?
It actually went better than expected. We were really focused on the location that it wouldn't do that great. Like we were hoping to cash flow, a couple $100, max $500 per month. And it just really started to gain traction for being a getaway. We have so many people that message us just saying that they love the peace and quiet. It's about probably a little over an hour from the city of Buffalo. So it's like just far enough to get out. And then there is a state park that's about 30 to 40 minutes away, which we can't believe how many people stay there and drive to go to the state park. But assumably it's cheaper than staying closer to the state park. We're actually surprised how much we did. And I think our first full year, like when it was from March to March, we had done about $35,000 in revenue. I think it was our first full year.
What were the biggest challenges you faced your first year, or things that you maybe didn't expect or you were hoping to improve as you were going forward with it?
The first thing is mice. So we had our first mouse enter the A-frame. So we had to add to our listing this being in the middle of the woods and just being an older property, like as much as we can spray foam cracks and crevices, like mice are most likely still going to find a way in. So we had to add into our listing, just like there may be critters and creatures because this is out in nature, whatever. And that really has like helped. Like we have had people message and say, hey, just, we saw a cute little mouse run across the kitchen. I'm like, oh my God, here it goes. They're leaving. And the whole time we've had it, we've had one person leave because they saw a mouse. And other than that, people either don't say anything or they just let us know and say it doesn't bother them. So
that's great. I was, we'll dive into your listing in a moment and kind of go over to see where there's some improvements at. But I saw that language and I do that. I have to do that in most of my nature and unique stays because you think it's obvious and common knowledge that if they're staying in somewhere very secluded that chance is there, but people don't think that far ahead. I noticed I had people that most of ours are in the forest and things, and who knows, they may leave the door open while they're bringing luggages in or something, and they see like a tree roach that just a common Texas tree roach that somehow got into the unit, and they're messaging me freaking out, and I'm like, well, did you let the roach in? Like, we have pest control, so I had to make sure I had in my listings as well too, like, hey, there's a good chance you may see a bug. If that bothers you, then this may not be the stay for you. And we do we have quarterly pest control, we do deep cleanings, all of that, but that chance is still there. So I was happy to see that in your listing, and I figured you had similar issues as me before. So
one thing I've always tried to learn is like, just put what you think is the most negative thing about your listing in the listing, because I would way rather somebody look at it that is like not for them, then them don't book it, than like trying to get people to book and then them complaining to me about the problem. Like there's a very steep driveway, and like if there is snow or if there's lots of rain and it's muddy, your car might not make it up. So we put in there like it is steep, and we have people that say like, I have a Subaru, like do you think it will make it? And we're like, yes, you definitely will. We just want to be like over cautious with people.
100%. Like I do applaud that a lot too, is like whatever you think is the common issue or an issue that a guest may point out, you want to get ahead of that. And if they are bothered by you putting that in your description and they don't want to book, then you probably avoided a problem going forward with them even being in your unit. And Airbnb, it's debatable, especially now they're going more AI removal of reviews and things. But before, if you had a lot of these things in your description or your rules, they were more lenient to take off reviews that would come in that were bad about something, like you mentioned, like a steep driveway or something like that. Guests are complaining. And if you have that in your description and your rules, it's kind of something that was already established to them. And Airbnb used to favor on some of those. The AI removal that they're kind of using now, I haven't had any luck with it yet, but we'll see how that kind of plays out as it goes over. How has this year been going for you? We're hearing about the Airbnb oversaturation and, all these, everybody's leaving. And how are you been doing this year?
We actually just did our second increase of our minimum nightly rate this year so far. So it's been going really good. We also have at least in the summer months, another thing that we found out was this property, well, we knew it wasn't well insulated, but we did not realize how bad that was. And over the winter months, our electric bill to heat it can be upwards to $600 per month. In the summer, it's $80 in there. So this coming year, we're actually going to shut it down for 3 months over the winter. And just because we are basically breaking even. So it's it's not worth it to have to deal with the snow, to manage it. And we might as well just shut it down. So we're going to try that out this year and see how that goes. But with this year, one thing I have noticed is that bookings are coming in a lot more last minute. We're not seeing people booking 3 months ahead of time. We are completely booked pretty much for, I would say 80%, maybe 75% booked for July, which is great. We'll cash flow probably about $1,500 right now as is. But we barely have any bookings for August yet, where in previous years, we were already seeing bookings for August, September, and now it's very last minute.
And that's across the board all throughout the United States, actually. I can't remember who put out the report. If some big, I want to say it might even been str.com or one of these big data STR sites. And they put out a report not long ago that booking lead time has dropped 12% year over year. In the past few years, every year it's gone down, but now it's about a 26-day lead time across the nation when it used to be 40 days a couple years ago. And I'm seeing that in my own properties, some of my most viral stays that are usually booked out 2 or 3 months in advance. We still have, a few openings within July, a few openings within August, which that is not typical, but those bookings still are getting filled. It's just way closer than even this week, we had a whole weekday, all weekdays open in one of our units. And I was getting a little nervous. I'm like, oh man. And then of course, I think 2 or 3 bookings came in to cover 3 out of those 4 days within a week before it booked, which used to be rare, but now is becoming more frequent. So I wouldn't stress too much in that capacity.
One thing on that point is my brother, he's home from college and he wanted to live in one of our short-term rentals while he was home. And I was like, okay, in between bookings or whatever. So he had looked at our calendar, all excited. I'm like, oh, just you wait, it's going to fill up last minute. Already he's seeing his days shrinking in July that he gets to stay there.
I hope he's got his cleaning shoes on because he might have a booking come in and he might have to clean it up himself and head
out of there.
That is definitely across the board. And I personally think from everything I see is some of it's macroeconomic, some of it's, people are kind of waiting last minute to book their vacations now and not, booking out as far in advance. But I think this is going to play into the favor of short-term rental hosts because more hosts are going to be doing more domestic travel. They're going to be looking for those getaways that, they don't want to spend a ton of money to go out the country or other things like that. So I think all the factors that are at play now might help us in the long run, but people are definitely a little more weary about booking stays, a few months away from now. And I have a strict cancellation policy on most of my listings for a few different reasons, but it plays into the favor of guests that they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to wait and see if this is available at the last minute because I don't want to have to change things. So it's just kind of different things I've seen around there. I'll share my screen and I have your listing up. It actually popped up first in this area when I was starting to search things on Airbnb to see what some of her competition was doing, which is obviously a great sign. Ashley has a ton of great reviews. There's a lot of things that I love about everything you set up the listing, like your language in the description is awesome. So I'll just kind of go through my list of questions as I would just naturally look through it. So first question before we get to some other things is I noticed you have a 3-night minimum all the time. What is your thinking behind the 3-night minimum? Is that something that you saw the others in the market doing, or is there a reason that you wanted it to be a 3-night minimum? I've heard different things from other hosts, so I'm curious as to how you landed on 3-night minimum.
We did it basically because, even if we did a 1-night minimum, 2-night minimum, the cost of the cleaning, it's like spread out better. And just like having our cleaner to go there less frequently. But really, we did it because we didn't have a problem with people booking the 3 nights.
Yeah, that's fine then.
And honestly, I have thought about doing it even 4 nights. I want to have like the least amount of like turnovers possible, but maybe you can like prove me wrong. Like maybe that's not a good thing.
I'll give you my insight to it and to how I think about it. Because, every place is so different. Some areas, they're fine with a 3-night minimum. Some places, there's places in Florida during the summer that a lot of them will do 5-night minimums because that's just what they can get. And they've analyzed everybody else and they see that's just what people will typically stay. My personal thought process, and I just recently took over a listing for somebody as a co-host. He has an amazing property. It's on a lake in Houston, and it's beautiful. He had only been booked one time all year. I finally got in touch with him, and he allowed me to take over the listing. But one of the first things I changed was I took his 3-night minimum down to 2 nights. But the reason I did it, and I'm trying to not get ahead of myself as I'm talking. So the main reason I do it is because when people search, typically they only search Friday through Sunday, the most common search out there. And so if you're booking your weekends out and you're getting it booked, you don't necessarily have to change this. My thought would be, and where I see the advantage to you change it to a 2-night minimum. Because you right now, if somebody is on Airbnb and searching for a Friday through a Sunday, your listing isn't even popping up. So you're not even becoming an option for them to do that. What if the way you set up your pricing with something like Price Labs, I don't know, are you using?
I am using Price Labs. We actually just started probably 6 months ago.
So within Price Labs, what you can do, and I've done this at some of my properties, and I did this with the property I just took over that I'm mentioning, you can set your rates you'll make almost as much money on a 2-night booking as you do with a 3-night. And you can incentivize them with the person with a massive discount in Price Labs. They call it a length of stay set, to where if they add that 3rd day, they get 30% off or 40% off. So you're incentivizing them to add that extra day. But you wouldn't have even been able to pop up in their search if you hadn't done the 2-night minimum, because people are typically doing the Friday through Sunday. And you might be able to get a booking that makes as much as your typical 3-night in the 2-night stay by just raising your prices some and seeing, just because you're getting the eyeballs on there. And one of the good tricks with Price Labs is when you add that length of stay discount, they could add it on themselves. But even another trick we've been doing it on our own properties, either manually or using like an AI tool like HostBuddy or different things there, is somebody books the 2-night, we'll send them a message not long after like, hey, we have this extra night available before or after, or, however it's set up. Do you want to extend your stay for a 20% discount or whatever you can do to incentivize them to book that extra day? If you're getting booked in the 3-night minimums and you feel like it's okay, you don't necessarily have to change this, but my goal would be to get more eyeballs on your property. The more eyes you're getting in Airbnb, even though you're doing well in the rankings of your local search, but this might push you up in the algorithm for New York in general or things like that too, to pop up that somebody's just searching around for a cool stay in, different parts of New York. And if you're not even able to pop up as a 2-night stay, then you don't even get that chance to win them over. And, this is when you can kind of mess with Price Labs and get the length of stay set how you want and how much you actually want to charge for the 2 nights. Because even with the co-listing I just took over, he said the same thing. He was like, my cleaning fee is so much, I don't want much turnover. And I was like, well, what if you just raised your prices to match the 3-night stay? Because then you only have guests in your place for 2 nights using utilities for 2 nights instead of 3 nights, and you're making almost as much as that 3rd night. He wasn't getting bookings at all. And so once I changed it, I think we've had 10 bookings in the past few weeks because I did that and I made it pet friendly and explained a few things to him about pet fees and things there. But if you are getting booked in the 3-night minimums, you don't necessarily have to change it. It's just something to kind of boost yourself up in the algorithm that I would pay attention to personally. But you can kind of play around with it and see and get a feel for it, especially now that you're on Price Labs. That's the best one by far to try out some of these things and see what you can do there. And it also really comes into play when it becomes slower. Summers, I'm sure you're probably pretty booked already. And if that's the case, then you can stick with the 3 nights. But even like on your weekdays, maybe it's something that you explore, trying to do, maybe a 2-night minimum there to try to incentivize something in that capacity. Or during your slow season, maybe you shift to the 2-night minimum there and see if you can make that as profitable as a 3-night stay you were doing prior. Just something to think about as you're going forward with it.
Garrett, did you ever pay $1,000, attend like a conference, and you're sitting there listening to the keynote speaker and you have this aha moment of like, oh my God, this was worth every penny in my time to come to this conference because of that one thing they just said? I cannot wait to make this change because even though we are booked on weekends, we probably could increase the price because we're not getting those eyeballs, which will increase the amount of people fighting for our weekends on that property. And you're right with wouldn't you rather have people there for 2 nights instead of 3 if you're making the same amount? So yeah, I am definitely going to implement this. And you are way too nice. You don't have to say like, oh, but do what you want if you're doing it this way. You should just be telling me exactly what to do. You are the expert.
Yeah, but it's obviously working though. Even we just talked about with, lead time being less, like just kind of looking through your calendar a little bit, you have some pretty solid weekend bookings already. So if you're getting that during a hot summer, I'm not against it, but if you could get, like I said, if you can get the eyeballs on the listing and Airbnb rewards people that get more views, and the Airbnb algorithm is nothing but an interest-based algorithm, similar to social media. The more views, the more click-throughs, the more interaction with your listing, the higher it's getting pushed up overall in the algorithm. I'll be on Airbnb browsing and I'll get listings from Oklahoma and I won't even be looking there, or Arkansas. And it's just because Airbnb knows what their good inventory is. So just something to think about going forward. And I think you'll be shocked at what people will pay for a 2-night weekend compared to, it blows my mind all the time, especially in some of my stays. So you probably could get very close to that 3rd night. Then you have either a day open for more inventory, or it's just less utilities, less operations you have to deal with.
I'm going to try this and I'm going to track it. I'm going to look at and so that I can give you this information and say, okay, we tried it, and look at the difference of it. Because I think there will be a big difference.
And we'll have you back on to tell us what you find. So,
and everybody, make sure you go check out my link and click on it to get more eyeballs.
Absolutely. Yeah. We will put it in the description. You wish list it and you tell Ashley that you came from the Bigger Stays video and you're super excited to see the changes for it. So the pictures are amazing, but I think one thing that stood out to me is your first 5 photos. I couldn't even really tell it's an A-frame. I can from the interiors, but me personally, and A-frames they tend to get more clicks. They do really well on social media. There's a reason why people build a lot of A-frames. I love your photos are great. The interior looks amazing. But, even if I'll go into the photos at the bottom, I was kind of looking through it. I wouldn't mind seeing a twilight photo maybe with your A-frame. I think those do so much better online. I think my best pictures on my most viral social media post have been like a twilight kind of nighttime-ish feel. And so that's just something I would point out to you. I always recommend for the first 5 photos, they need to be as different as possible. See, right now I see 4 interior photos. So because people, when they're looking on Airbnb, they are just scrolling. They'll see your listing like, okay, I'm gonna go to another listing. They'll be on the Airbnb platform and they're just clicking next. And so you have to capture them within those first 5 photos. And I think going into your photos on Airbnb and rearranging them to make your 5 most spectacular photos you have first, and then you kind of take them through a walkthrough, more of like traditional real estate photos do, where they can kind of see the property from there. Because A-frames just get so many clicks, and you have a really cool, unique one there. And so I would really emphasize that going forward with. I think you'll be able to hit an even higher click-through rate on especially now you'll get more eyeballs on your listing from having the 2-night. And then how do you get them to click in? You have to have something really enticing. And then those first 5 photos will dictate if they want to even go see the rest of your photos. I noticed in your listing description, which was great. I think one thing people do on their listing description sometimes is they just try to make it too complex and too much of a story. And like, don't just, people on Airbnb are just, they're running through listings trying to see like what's available and all that. And you did a great job of emphasizing the main points. I personally would like to see bullet points on some of your features because it's just easier to read for guests. Some guests are lazy. Like let's just call it like it is. Some guests are not going to read all the fine points and they'll kind of see it and yours isn't overwhelming. They probably get through most of it. But I even heard Avery Carl talking about this not long ago. Like she loves to see the same thing that I talk about with like give them what they want up front and then hit the big points and some bullet points really quick. So that way they can just kind of go through it. But that's more of a minimal style change there. So you do allow pets. I do see that. Do you have a pet fee attached to this?
Yeah, it's $35.
$35 per pet?
No, I think it's just a $35 fee.
And you allow only one pet or do you allow 2 pets? Or?
2, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So I would 100%, I'll be honest, I would increase your fee a little bit. Some of my listings I've had it at $39. A lot of them I've recently went up to $49 per pet per stay. I have some friends in the space that they've increased their pet fee to $100 a pet. There's some, and I don't necessarily think this is your best approach, but I'm just giving you the knowledge of like, you're not going to be overzealous with your fee going up to about $49 because there's some hosts that I know that are very successful with this. They do per night, per pet fees. And so they're getting, I know I have one guy that he gets $100 per pet per night, and he made about $100,000 in pet fees last year.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so it's just something to think about going forward. And, I think 35 is kind of reasonable. It's something you could test too.
I have to look into that because I do have someone, like full disclosure, I do have someone who co-hosts with me that does all our messaging. I'd actually paid her a flat fee to help me set up this listing. So like the software we use and stuff like that. So like, as far as how nice this listing is, she actually did this one for me. But yeah, I'll have to ask her on the pet fees. I know it's 35 and it's per stay, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 pets maximum.
Yeah. So I would do per pet there. You'll be shocked at how much people are willing to, and you'll still have the people that don't pay and try to just bring the pet in. And that's a whole other different issue we could talk about another time. But for the most part, people are so happy to see a pet friendly place that's clean and nice. And they're willing to usually pay that extra fee. And, it goes a long way because there's going to be more pet hair and all these things that are just constantly have to deal with. You have to change out more sheets possibly. You'll tell them not to be on the furniture and they'll still be on the furniture. So just something to think about going forward. Do you offer a late checkout, late check-in fee at all by chance?
We have it like listed in our guidebook as an option, but we've never really been strict on it. Basically, if someone asks and we can do it, we do it. Usually it's early check-in because I still have the Airbnb app on my phone. So like I see all of our messages that come through, even though I'm not the one responding. And I really don't see most people asking for a late checkout at all. But we do get a lot of people that ask for the early check-in. And if we can make it work, we usually do just give it to them.
I do the same. I hate late checkouts for a few different reasons. I know another guy that makes a killing with late checkout and early check-in fees. I personally am not a huge fan of them. Late checkout's tough because my cleaners are on a schedule. If I push it back, I have to arrange it with them. And, if there's more guests coming in, and it's just a nightmare. The early check-in is where I think you could capitalize in. And I'm the same. Like if, our check-ins at most places is 4 p.m. If a guest wants to check in at 3, like we don't charge them. And if it's ready, like that just adds to the guest experience early on for them to be happy.
Yeah, I agree. Like just that initial thing, like already is giving them a positive experience.
But if you have it open, and you'd be shocked at what people will pay for to get in early, like, at 12 p.m. maybe. If you have it open, it's ready. It's just something that you could automate in your messages. I plugged this a couple of times just because I think it's a great product. And I met the guy actually at BPCon last year, 24. I'm sure he'll be at BPCon 25, which we will both be at in Vegas. Host Buddy AI, it's a great tool. They automate a lot of these things and can help you do these upsells. It's $10 a month per property, I think. it will fill gap nights for you. It will do these early check-in upsells. You give it the knowledge base that you have and your guidebooks, and then it will answer questions for you almost around the clock. So it's a pretty cool tool, and you still can jump in and stop the AI from answering when you want to. So just something to kind of think about possibly exploring, especially with the early check-in fee.
So you're saying that this is eliminating my need for a co-host.
I am pro co-host, so I do not want your co-host to be like, hey, why was that guy telling you to do all this? Because, there's a lot of things that AI and these messaging services will never be able to solve.
Yeah, so. There's definitely still that need for human touch. And there's also definitely like some of the things she deals with or response. I'm like, oh, that was so nice. I would have not been that.
I've started to, I have a couple assistants that work for me, and I have a kind of little team, but at the same time, there's times where I'm about to answer a message and I either let my assistant take over because I'm like, hey, I'm a little too upset or I can't answer that. Or I will take my response, put it into ChatGPT and go, hey, make this more professional and not as rude or something, And
that is a great idea. Yeah.
And then I'll send it out, and it just, because it takes out a little bit of the human element. Because, like investments are not supposed to be, like you're not supposed to take things personal, but sometimes you do. It's just like, you're like, oh, I put so much work into this and you're mad about this little thing.
Yeah. You get like defensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a thought going forward. But if you have a great co-host that, it pays for itself over time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
They're worth every penny. And just like all the co-hosting listings I do, they find out very quick, like why we are professional co-hosts in the space. So it's very helpful there. So yeah, you have great reviews, which is huge. You have a good track record there. Even though your August isn't as packed as you probably want it to be, your July looks great compared to a lot of other people around. Are you on multiple platforms, or are you only on Airbnb?
Only on Airbnb.
So have you thought about, or even with your co-host, getting to some of these other smaller platforms? Or, I don't want to call them smaller because Vrbo's pretty big, and booking.com, which kind of personally hate booking.com, if I want to be transparent. So I don't really recommend that one anymore. I used to, but I was just thinking that you'd be surprised where these little gap dates get filled at with some of these other platforms. There's one called Glamping Hub. There's one called Hip Camp that you would think it's only like tents, but it actually, they book a lot of my unique stays. There's a new one called Whim Stay that I actually met at a different conference that I was at recently. I got onto their platform, and within a few weeks, I had like 3 or 4 bookings through this Whim Stay. It's a new online travel agency that they are prioritizing like openings within 30 days, and they give like a little discounted rate, and it's a really cool platform. But all of these can be synced into a property management software as well too. So if your co-host is using some type of property management software, it's very easy to put these all into one bundle to where it's one message. I use Logify, and you'll have a unified inbox that you can answer all of these questions from all these platforms. You're not going to get double booked because all the calendars sync. It helps you with your revenue reports, all these things that, as you're kind of expanding on it, just become helpful.
We're using Hostfully.
Hostfully is great. Yeah, a lot of people use that. And so if you already have a property management software, it's almost a no-brainer to at least get on Vrbo. I mean, I personally don't get a ton of Vrbo bookings, but you'll talk to people in all these different markets, and they'll, this market for some reason will get more Vrbo bookings, and Vrbo tends to be bigger homes, but I still get a few from there.
Yeah, I think I just haven't done it because I haven't looked into it, and my manager hasn't done it. So yeah, that's something definitely to look into.
Just something to think. It's no reason to not be. They're free to be on. You can all in your property management system. You can adjust. Vrbo takes a higher percentage than Airbnb, but you can adjust your rates in your property management system, so that way you add on the 10% to Vrbo, and it becomes a little more expensive. But again, there's eyeballs in every corner of the internet that you don't even realize. Airbnb is the dominant force, but not all eyes are on Airbnb. I found out even on my own accord. So those are just some like quick things overall. But for the most part, if you go through some of the other listings that are near you. There's some of them that don't have professional photos. When you're looking at it, you're trying to find like, all right, what's my competition? Like when people are looking at my place, like what other ones could they possibly book at the same time? So I just was kind of going through a few. I thought this one was interesting. You can see your nightly rate is almost about $1,200 for 5 nights. Theirs is about $2,600 for 5 nights. How many bedrooms is your listing, or beds is it?
It's 2 beds, a full bed and a queen bed.
Cool. This one has 3 beds, and I'm not going to like dive into how I would analyze it, but it's you can kind of look at it, and they have some interesting photos. I like them. The sun shining through and every photo is interesting, but you can tell it's a well put together listing. Quick question, and I'll just throw it out and you can take it as you want. Have you thought about adding a hot tub?
Yes, but my electric bill is already so high.
Okay.
That was literally the reason I haven't. And we would have to get a different service. I'm pretty sure I remember a contractor telling me that like however many amps go to the cabin, it wouldn't support a hot tub. So we would have to change that out. And that's the reason we haven't done it. But we should look into it because I bet it would do well.
I think that if you look at this listing, the cabin in Portageville, like why it's probably getting $1,500 more than yours 5. Is it getting that? You can dive into it and like really see. But one of the main things that sticks out is that, the hot tub, and it's one of the first things in there that you see. They even had it, in the title of the description. So it's just something to think about because, yeah, there's a lot to it. There definitely takes more, and it's not necessarily something I would always recommend. But all my properties that have a hot tub, I don't remember who put out the stat. It might have been AirDNA or somewhere along those lines. But that a hot tub in most markets is going to make you about 30 to 35% more revenue. Is it worth the extra hassle? And if you have to do all these upgrades and things, that's up to you. One thought, and this is what I've done at a few of my places that have less electrical abilities. I have a couple properties that are in a public park that we actually partnered with a state park, and we've been expanding on their campground. So it's really cool. I love it because there's landscaping done for me, all these things. But the electrical that we have there couldn't support a hot tub or a sauna or some different things we thought there, which I'll piggyback into the sauna shortly after. But have you thought about maybe a wood-fired hot tub possibly? They're out there, not that expensive. Are they as easy to maintain as an electric one? No, but it's still relatively easy with a low lift on your end from the infrastructure side. And you can also like do the marketing and the branding of it is like, it's a health and wellness, wood-fired hot tub with low chemicals and, good for you. So just something to think about. And I even recently got one. I want to say there was like $4,000 for the wood-fired hot tub. It came from Europe. The company I work with a lot helped make that happen. But just something to think about if electrical was there. Or outdoor bathtubs are a very big thing. And, you could get a bigger outdoor bathtub, and you either could supply a small tanked water heater because it doesn't take as much electrical, or you could even look into like a propane water heater to kind of, it just depends on what utilities and things you have available. So just some ideas I'm throwing out. And you also could there's Costco sells a sauna that's a really nice sauna for about $2,000.
That's one thing we have looked at for there is a sauna because there is an unfinished basement. And so we've thought about like finishing the basement, and then we could put the sauna down there because there's not really room in the cabin anywhere for it.
There's outdoor saunas that are great, and you can get a ton of indoor saunas that are the infrared ones, and just something to explore, especially if in your area. I have a sauna at most of my places now, but when I first put mine up, people thought I was crazy because they're like, why are you doing a sauna in Houston, Texas?
Well, I feel like that's probably easier to maintain than a hot tub too, right?
So much easier to maintain. It is night and day maintaining that versus a hot tub. Not even close. You don't have to train your cleaner. The main thing is you just need to make sure you have the rules up of the sauna, for the guest. But most of the time, sauna is 100% easier to maintain. One of these little saunas from Costco, like the infrared, you just plug and play into your electrical socket as long as you have a 3-prong one there. So just something to explore because that's, I think, the one thing that cabin that we were just kind of looking at is it just has a few more slight amenities. Again, if they're actually getting this nightly rate consistently, we'd have to dive in further into the numbers. But I don't think for $1,500 more per night of what they're charging, I don't think y'all's listings are that different. They just have the hot tub and a couple other small, the extra bed and some small things there to think about. So just some kind of like outside things that I'm kind of seeing, because overall you have a great listing and obviously it's performing well, especially if you're going to shut it down for those 3 months, which I don't think that's an issue at all. I think that's smart, especially you're trying to get ahead of something, it's probably very hard to operate with, everything going on and, snow coming in.
Yeah, and then we don't have to worry about snow plowing and the driveway getting icy. So it will actually end up being like 2 months because we won't close it till right after the new year because we always do great in December. So it will be like basically January, February, we'll shut it down.
And then you can maximize your revenue through the other months that you're open by maybe getting the sauna or doing a few other things, and you'll still probably end up making more money, and then you'll have 2 months off where you don't even have to worry about a guest complaining about a mouse coming into your place or something like that. So I think you'll win in that capacity.
And just like our holding costs are very low on the property too, with it only being, like $130,000 property. But so our mortgage payment is very, very low.
Did y'all refinance out and get any of the cash out, or y'all just?
Yeah, I used a line of credit I had to purchase it. And then I used my cash to fund the rehab. And then we did a refinance and it appraised for $130,000 what we had into it. So I ended up taking out a loan for like $88,000. So I did leave some money into the deal.
Very cool. And if it's going well, seems like a great property. You got to at least renovate some of the major issues, and now you're learning, where your money is getting burnt at if you're, running it in the winter with electricity, all those things like that too. So definitely will be paying attention. I'm hoping that everybody is going to wish list the listing a ton of times and just shoot it up into the, the United States algorithm of Airbnb. And yeah, I appreciate you joining to kind of, go over it a little bit. And anybody that is looking to connect with you, if they don't already know where you're at, how can they find you on social media and other places there to chat a little further if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, you can find me at Wealth from Rentals on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and then also the Real Estate Rookie podcast with Bigger Pockets. Also, you can find us on Instagram at Bigger Pockets Rookie, and then on YouTube at Real Estate Rookie. But Garrett, thank you so much. I definitely can't wait until this airs so that I can rewatch it again. I took a ton of notes, but I know there's some stuff that I missed and I'm going to have to go back and watch. And reflecting on this, I learned that I need to not be lazy and I need to run the numbers if it makes sense, or I need to go ahead and put it on VRBO and just do the things and see if they work out or not to actually maximize this property. One thing I've been really stressing on lately is like stabilizing. Like I was in acquisition mode for so long, like 30 units by 30, and it's like, oh my God, Ashley, why would you, that shouldn't have been a thing. Like focusing on really like maximizing the performance of each property has been something I've worked really hard on for my long-term rentals. And now I'm trying to focus on my couple short-term rentals a lot more to do that the same.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about short-term rentals is you can pull a lot of levers and increase your cash flow tremendously from just doing a few things and a few operating things, which is a little tougher on the long-term rental side to skyrocket in your cash flow with just a few different tricks there. But don't worry, all of us have suffered from door disease. I still suffer from it, so you're not the only one. So I'm glad to see it's all starting to pay off and you're starting to get back into your properties. And I really appreciate you for joining us and giving all the insight that you always do at the Real Estate Rookie Show for everyone. We'll link everything in the description below. Anybody has any comments or wants to see part 2 with Ashley pretty soon to see how these changes work, let us know below. We appreciate y'all for watching. Y'all have a good week.